Greetings, nerds. This is Cena Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Beaumont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Paul. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, sir. How are you doing this evening?
Well, you talked me into a 20-minute pre-show.
I know. We're catching up. We're catching up. I know you had some days off, and I'm actually on the road tonight at a conference, and we'll be traveling tomorrow, so we just recorded a night early. So, yeah.
And you had to get out your Swiftie soapbox, and we had to talk about that. Apparently, it's very strong opinions.
Very strong.
Anyway.
Well, I think the consensus for both of us is that the media is the coverage of it is extremely cringe.
Yeah. It's really bad. And honestly, her fans are not helping anything.
No. Yeah.
The joke died after maybe the fifth time. But now it's really been beaten to death. But
yes.
Yeah, but we won't dive deep into that because every other person is apparently talking about nothing but that. So instead, we have two finales to talk about tonight. Man, it's October.
Yep.
You know, I'm still not used to it's still interesting. Like, this maybe is like our second year without, like there was the show pre-pandemic with all of the Arrowverse stuff going on, and October was premiere month for like at least 4 different shows.
Yeah.
And September was slow, and now we're here a few years later, and between the pandemic and a lot of cancellations and a lot of shows ending, now we're not covering like hardly any CW shows at the moment. And we got these streaming services, and tonight we're going to talk about a Netflix show as well as a Disney Plus show. So it's just interesting to think of where we are now versus where we were.
Yeah, it really is. I was having dinner with a friend of mine tonight. We were talking about our show, and she listens to us from time to time, and the evolution. She remembers when you and I first started doing this, and the evolution from where, like you said, from where we started, where we were like 100% Arrowverse, but a few things sprinkled here and there, to now, to where we are now. And it is an interesting feeling to not be like, oh, we got the CW premiere this month, fill in a blank show.
Yeah. A part of me misses it because it was like, it felt like reuniting with family.
Yeah.
and I don't know, there was a build up, there was a lot of talk and everything.
Yep.
Not to say that there isn't, because I mean, there's little bits here and there, and coming off of the strike stuff, the media has been few and far between for a lot of projects, but that shall return soon. All right. Well, let's just dive into it with Ahsoka, the Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, Part 8. We DM'd each other last night a little bit about this. I said I still remain like having very complicated feelings about this entire season. And that was just like the finale was just the cherry on top of that. Like, yeah, my opinions have not changed. Was not swayed one way or the other, and I'm remaining neutral. I'm very Switzerland about this show. But you also surprised me a little bit because you kind of sounded like you had some very complicated feelings. But
I did.
So where do you want to start with this one?
Let's just jump right into it. I mean, I had complicated feelings as well. I enjoyed the episode, but it didn't, but I sound like I'm repeating like how I did after, I think it was episode 4. It didn't blow me away. And I think for me, as someone who watched Rebels and Clone War, there were some definite payoffs. And I even like tweeted one now that we're talking about the show, the ending was a huge payoff for me for multiple reasons with Balin. But I don't want to jump to that was, so I think that was the highlight of the episode for me. But then there were other things that were, were problematic for me and like things that we discussed throughout the season crept up again in this episode. And so that did leave me feeling a little let down to be blunt. So I had very mixed feelings about this finale. I guess is the best way to put it. To use the Bean's words from last week, it's complicated.
I'm so glad she didn't say that in this episode, but it really is complicated. No, I think that I know that there were a few Easter eggs, a few like insider name drops and finally references that fans of previous shows from Filoni would appreciate and get a lot of excitement out of it. But I do also think overall, I don't like how this finale was structured.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually last week when we were talking about penultimate episodes, I was going into this episode thinking, okay, I think I'm going to like the finale more than I did the penultimate.
Mm-hmm.
Because in past, when they've had that kind of, let's not really resolve anything, but still get our pieces on the chessboard of where we want people to be for the finale, then there's more for me to potentially get out of resolving. And when I say that, I don't mean like a 20-minute fight sequence with zombies. I mean character conflict resolution. Mm-hmm. And yes, this show is called Ahsoka. So the fact that there was a lot to the big character developments and revelations came from the master apprentice relationship between Sabine and Ahsoka. Cool. However, you spent a lot of time talking about Sabine's need to find Ezra. And I do like the switch, but at the same time, I don't like the switch because I don't know. Okay, I don't know whose decision it was. I'm blaming Filoni. Mm-hmm. But why wasn't there this? Why couldn't we see the scene where there's recognition from Ezra of what Sabine did to get there?
Yeah.
Like,
yes. Big problem. Big problem that left. I don't know if it got left on the cutting room floor. He didn't write it to begin with or what, but that was a big missed opportunity, quite frankly, that the series left on the table.
Yeah, it was, I don't feel like it was something they cut, considering how even Ahsoka didn't fully bring it up. Mm-hmm. like, I don't know. There was such a well-planted seed for dramatic tension between these three characters that could have had a lot of very interesting things to say about what is the right thing to do in these circumstances that we've seen play before. Okay. Yeah. I mean, literally we started our year watching The Last of Us. Okay. Mm-hmm. Joel pulled a Sabine, but in the right way.
Yeah.
But in the right way. He pulled it where I can forgive him for pulling it.
Well, and it's, and to that point too, one, there is that aspect of it. And I guess the other thing that bothered me was like, we go through this 8-episode journey and we basically end up back where we started, except now Sabine and Ahsoka are like on Peridia and Ezra and is back on, back in the Prime Galaxy and stuff. So, I guess structurally they set it up so that the finale was almost like, we're going to close out some stories in this, but we're going to keep it open. Yeah, we're going to keep other things open to lead into Ahsoka season 2 or into the Filoni movie.
Yeah.
But the other, yeah.
No, I just want to bring it up while we're here. That's another thing that I don't understand why we couldn't. There's so much that I feel like we should have seen that was just like glazed over, including Ezra is on Thrawn's ship. Okay, I get it. He disguised himself as a trooper, but that's not a short flight. And the grandmothers are on the ship as well, and they can sense Jedi. And how did he get his own little ship to go? It's just like, to me, that's okay. You're not going to show us all of that. I get maybe for time purposes, but at the same time, it's weird to me how it was so easy for him to get off that ship.
Yeah, that is a big. Yeah, that's one of many plot holes. I mean, it was a nice nod to, I love the fact that he was wearing a stormtrooper uniform, because that was again a nice nod back to Rebels, because Ezra, that was a trick that he always pulled whenever they needed to infiltrate an Imperial facility. But if Chopper can sense, if Chopper can read the life sign readings through the costume to realize that, oh, that's Ezra, then, we established 2 episodes prior that when they first got to several episodes prior, when they got to Peridia, they were able to sense the taint of Jedi on Sabine. And so that's something that they definitely, that's a nitpick, but it's a significant nitpick, because they should have been able to, once he got on the ship, they should have sent people down to that hangar bay to like apprehend him. The other thing, as far as while we're talking about the first part episode with Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka, that I think if they had to do it over again, I wish they would have done this differently. Is they did the tell about that the last episode why Ahsoka and Sabine had their falling out, and it makes and the reason why I wish they had done it sooner is it deepens. It would have deepened the conflict between them throughout the season, and really give them more heft to why their training fell apart, as far as the Empire taking out Mandalore, and of course Sabine wanting, Ahsoka's afraid that Sabine will want vengeance. I wish they had like put that in there. And even at that, even when they had the discussion, they didn't have it face to face. It was still like Ezra and Huang and Ahsoka talking about it. So.
Right. It's like, to me, I liked that revelation, just because we got so much Anakin leading up to this episode, and even in this episode we saw him, but that it almost felt like, in a way, it wasn't just addressing that, but it was also, it just was for me, I found it to be a good thread of this, like, reminder Ahsoka is still reconciling who her own master, like, was and became, which again, with Thrawn's taunt to her at the end, it pulled that forward again. But you're exactly right. Like, it's a conversation that probably could have had more emotional punch had it been with the right characters. Like, either the conversations we want or should be having are not had, or they're with the wrong people. It's not that it's a messy show.
No.
I just felt like, with some of the seeds that they planted, I was expecting more character tension
Yeah.
and resolution and just communications. I'm really annoyed that I feel like, especially the last 4 episodes, half of the season, there has been 20 to 25 minutes. So basically half of the episodes just dedicated to fighting, like dedicated to big set pieces.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not a compelling show. And we all know this because I always talk about how I'm not here necessarily for the action. I'm here more for these character moments. And the fact that we have talked about all of the potential, all of the where they could be going with these characters, and we didn't really get any of that. It's very disappointing to me.
Yeah. And that's exactly why I had mixed feelings about this episode. I think I didn't go into it with like a headcanon or head thoughts of like, oh, here's how I want the show to go. And it didn't, and I didn't like it because it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. It's exactly the point that you just made here, as far as there's so many character moments that were missed, and it was just something that was a, a problem with this series throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
And so this is where, that's where it's almost holding the show back from me keeping it from going to the next level where we're talking about it. Like, it's a Star Wars show and it's doing all the right Star Wars things that, say Book of Boba Fett did not do, and even where Obi-Wan failed in some places. But so at least it's doing that piece right. But you're right. But the character arcs and the character stories is where, and some of the pairings and decision points as far as how they structure these very critical emotional moments is where I feel the series is lacking. That say Andor had.
Yeah. I think Andor is a better show than Ahsoka. I feel like Ahsoka, it started off really strong, as we've mentioned before, but it slowly, I want to say about midway through, started to pick up Mandalorian. Like it started to fall into some of those pockets, and I'm like, okay, I can see somebody sharing some writers. I think something's happening. But again, like I've watched Mandalorian for all 3 seasons. Like I'm not necessarily saying it's bad.
No.
There are worse Star Wars shows, but it's just, I'm going to stick with my word of disappointing because it had so much potential that it started off with, at least. And something I didn't think about until I was listening to people talk about the show before we got on tonight is I really wonder if this was shot in like slow-mo just because of the lack of urgency throughout this episode and last week's episode. Like, I know Thrawn is up in, like, has his all planned and looking at his watch, but even he's taking everything very slow. And Sabine and Ahsoka taking things slow. Like, they're just chilling, just moving along. Like, I think that was something that was missing. Like, when I really reflect on my experience last night watching it, it did feel like, okay, everybody's got all the time in the world. I don't know why. And then it would like jump speed to like, oh no, the ship's leaving. You gotta jump. Can't make it. It's so weird.
It was very oddly paced. And I think that was where when I got my gut reaction when I finished watching the episode, that was what I was feeling. It was just a very oddly placed show and episode, and and except for when it had the fight scenes, and I think I mean, Rick Famuyiwa, I think, directed this episode. He's directed some episodes of Mandalorian. I think he did the Mandalorian season 3 finale, and it felt a lot like that episode where it was just, again, I also felt I was kind of meh over mixed feelings over that finale. I think this one was better, but for different reasons. But, yeah, the fight scenes, I mean, to your point about Thrawn, I the one thing I did like about this episode was it did show his one big weak spot, and that's dealing with Jedi. Cause if he's dealing with Rebel, like if he's dealing with just normal Rebel Alliance folks, other humans, other races in the Star Wars universe, I mean, he is a tactical genius, and he's always what we saw many times in Rebels where he outsmarted the Rebel Alliance and Phoenix Squadron and all. But except for when it comes to Jedi, that's his one weak spot. And I think they brought in the purpose of the Night Sisters, for one of the purposes of them is to help sort of close that gap that he has from a tactical standpoint. Because, it leveled the playing field for him now that he has these Force users, even though it's Force users through magic, but he clearly he used them to, draw Morgan to Peridia, through the Night Sisters, and then of course using their magic to change her to give her the gifts of the full gifts of the Night Sisters, and get the Blade of Talzan, which is a Clone Wars reference, and it shows how that all went down. Her getting the black markings like the rest of the Night Sisters. So, that was, I thought, a good thing that they did with Thrawn this episode, to one. And two, the other cool thing I thought was where he did get perturbed, because normally he can predict things, but he was, getting it. There were a couple moments in the episode where he did get like, screw it. Take him out. I'm done. Yeah, before I'm fine with this leaving them stranded here. Now kill these Jedi. I don't want them around anymore. So,
Yeah.
So I think that was that piece. And then I think I'm trying to remember, there was one other moment where he was perturbed by some of the movement. Things didn't go according to plan. So then he kind of shifted the tactics a little bit. I think maybe it was whenever, yeah.
Do you know what happens to Thrawn in the end?
In the Legends books, which I haven't read the Legends books. I know there's like Heir to the Empire was the one that was written by Timothy Zahn. And then there's another round of books that goes into Thrawn. Thrawn's ultimately defeated. And I think from the seeds of that, the First Order comes up. But it's not, yeah, but this is all in the Star Wars Legends books that Disney says it's non-canon at this point. But of course but the thing is, even though things are non-canon as far as the events in the books, clearly, they have been clearly bringing things in from the Legends into live action.
Yeah. Okay. Because I did hear people mention, like, they already know what happens to him. So they were trying to reconcile some of the character choices that were made with, like, well, we know what happens to Thrawn, but these characters at this point don't. So why are they?
Right. And be careful with that too, because again, that's all legend stuff. So whatever happened in those books, that's why I've actually started staying away from like a lot of discussions on these shows while we've been recording them, so that I don't get the Legends continuity start sprinkling in and confusing our casual listeners who haven't read any of those things. Cause this show had a lot to do in and of itself to like educate casual Star Wars viewers, but just 2 animated shows. You don't even want to throw in the books and to complicate matters even more.
Right.
Not insulting the intelligence of our listeners. It's just, it's just a lot of continuity to try to keep track of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like we pointed out a few plot holes, so they already have continuity issues with their own
with their own show. Yeah.
So to go back to how this episode ends and how the season ends, there's the Ezra gets out, Thrawn gets out,
Mm-hmm.
Elsby dies, or we think.
No, she's gone. She's gone.
Nobody. It's magic, Will. It's a magic, Will. You never know. Okay.
You never know.
Literally we saw zombies on the show.
Yeah. But they were only created zombies now. They held off to the very end.
True.
Yeah.
But we know Balin is out there. We also know, unfortunately, the actor who plays him died. Shiv is still around, and I liked Shiv's last part. I think it's interesting just because she sees some of the troopers who made it out. Again, Elsby, you never know. Don't count a witch out. So we see her potentially finding her own people. I like the fact that she's still on the planet because Sabine, Yana, and Ahsoka are there as well. And you know what? I am happy that people are still behind on this planet because those poor not turtle people. Okay. I felt very bad for them in this episode. And then you see them and they're like, we can't fix our stuff anymore. Nobody here. And then Ahsoka's here. So, and has the technology. Like, come on, y'all. Let's make it right with these kind people.
Yeah, that's right.
Take them with you, cause my lord, they need to meet Grogu. Okay. That needs to happen.
That show definitely needs to happen. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why they're still there. Okay. You can't leave the not turtle people, the peaceful not turtle people, like, by themselves. Like, the galaxy needs that. Yeah. So we got an interesting mix of Jedi, non-Jedi on this planet. And then we have Mortis, which I think you brought up on the show last week, but for those of us who are still trying to understand what Mortis is and what this could mean besides obvious plot to get the characters back to Galaxy Prime, can you fill us in a little bit?
Yeah. So we were wondering what was Balin ultimately after. And we get that shot, the rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. I don't know what they're going to do with that storyline, but he comes upon a statue, a bit carved into a mountain, something that was inspired from Mortis, which is basically is a realm, the planet that is a balanced planet where you had the father, son, and a daughter. This was first shown in Clone Wars. The picture of them was also referenced in in Rebels. But so the father is the middle, the daughter represented the good side of the Force, the son represented the Sith, and the father was the middle, the balance. And so in Clone Wars, long and short of it, Ahsoka was killed, and Anakin, given that he has been deemed the chosen one to bring balance to the Force, took the life force of the sister and actually and transferred it over to Ahsoka so that Ahsoka could live again. So, but then in this episode, you probably saw the owl, and we also saw the owl in The Mandalorian. That was the sister's owl, who was a part of this Trinity in the Star Wars Force universe. And so when Balin comes up on that statue, we see the father, we see the son, but we don't see the daughter. That part of the mountain has been demolished, and I guess probably makes sense given that the Night Sisters, in their dark magic probably were the ones who took it down. That's my thinking. That whole thing really gets into, I think, gets to the core of what Balin is seeking, which is, that power to bring, I guess maybe he sees some, filling that void of wanting to have the balance in the Force or trying to tap into that energy. The whole world between worlds also comes into play with this, which we saw in this series, because the Sisters Owl also appeared in the world between worlds when Ezra saved Ahsoka from Darth Vader whenever they were fighting. So I think ultimately bring all these points up to say Balin's ultimate goal is it seems to be to get some type of level of control over destiny or the Force or something. And so him coming upon that, the two parts of the statue at the end of the episode was reflective of that.
Yeah. It felt, I like this idea of control over destiny and fate, just because it's a very God-like ability, and thinking about how just this setting, I mean, I've said a lot of bad things about this show, but my God, does it get points from me? Because I was even telling my dad, I'm like, the cinematography, they must have shot this in New Zealand, because good Lord, this is Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings vibes, like something else. It's very beautiful. And I know some people are saying it's a bit dreary because of the color palette, but when you have witches and when you have this villain who looks like a monster and you're looking for like these things of power, that setting is just perfect for whatever reason. And it
definitely gets into the mystical side of Star Wars that, it was again, deeply mined in the animation, even in the Legends, like the whole Talzan. I mean, that's, and just to give another, Talzan and the Dathomir, she was actually the mother, Dathomir. Talzan was, Darth Maul's mother. So, so all these things are, definitely getting into the magical realm of Star Wars as a counterbalance to showing how there's different manifestations of the Force in the galaxy. So I'm on board with that. I mean, and it's really sad that, Ray Stevenson is no longer with us and can carry this character forward. What they're going to do with this story arc. Will they recast him? I don't know. They have,
I think that even though he did a fantastic job, the character's still new. It's not going to hurt anybody to recast.
No, it won't.
And you've set it up so much, but then again, they did something this season with a lot of setup, and then they wiped it all away with one line of dialogue.
Yeah, true. But I think they can. They can. Yeah. Well, heck, I mean, to that point, but real quick about Balin, and I'll go to what you said about the dialogue. We saw, like in Harry Potter, and Richard Harris, who played Dumbledore, big character, died. They brought in Michael Gambon, who also recently just passed away, I think in the last week or so. But it can be done, like you said. And I think this character, this story that they have set up here is, bigger than the performer. Not in the sense that, not in the sense that I'm being cold here. It's just, it's very integral to the overall story that they're telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they'll recast. And then as far as the line of dialogue, I mean, that's another issue that I had, this week with the whole lightsaber thing. We set up, we go to all this length with showing that, we had it in Rebels where Kanan is like, having a lightsaber doesn't make you a Jedi. We had it last week with Ezra, and then and his whole lesson was Sabine, earlier this season about, having a lightsaber doesn't make you a Jedi. And then they all of a sudden undercut it, having Ezra build a lightsaber, which was a cute moment. It was a nice moment. I love how they did tie in, Ezra. This is now building his third lightsaber. And, and the reference to Kanan, which is a nice little reference to Caleb Boone, which was his birth name. So it was all nice a moment, but I just felt like it undercut what we just saw last week with what made Ezra seem like super Jedi and being able to like fight off things. And then the other thing too, we have to talk about Sabine finally using the Force. And again, I just have to fight. To close the loop on the season before we like move on to One Piece. It just was just too convenient for me. That moment fell completely flat. Again, that's another reason why this episode, I had mixed feelings about it. The jump thing would have been, to me, the better, more dramatic and more effective moment of her using, finally figuring out how to do this than the moment that they chose. Because if she, she can't
didn't do that. Because if I was Ezra, I can see why they didn't do the jump thing. Because if I was Ezra, I don't know if I would trust Sabine to lift me, considering I hadn't seen her use the Force before.
Yeah, but she's seen it being done before many times in Rebels. So to me, it would have worked better because it would have shown that he has trust in her ability to use the Force. Versus the other method where it was just like, you can't move a cup, but now you can all of a sudden pull your lightsaber to you just because you're in danger. And it wasn't even to save Ezra, it was to save yourself. So that's why it didn't work for me.
Yeah. Which I'm not saying it did work for me. I thought it was lame either way. I can see why they went with that, the safer choice rather than the more ballsy choice.
That's a good way of putting things. There's a lot of safe decisions being made in this series.
Just a lot of like, WTF, mate? Why?
Yeah.
I don't know about it anymore and maybe I don't think I went into this show having extreme expectations. I really don't. However, I have heard a lot of, I'm gonna be frank, a lot of fans of Filoni's work have hyped him up. So maybe in the long run, I did expect more from his writing.
Mm-hmm.
Because to come to the finale and have this much discussion about plot holes, weird pacing, weird safe choices, it's like, where is the guy I was hearing about so much? Because this episode could have had a different director, but we know Filoni's all over this show, no matter what. So I think in the long run, the buck stops with him. And that's where I would place some of the like questions to. But in terms of like, as we make our way over to One Piece, it's interesting to me because I feel like One Piece also made a lot of safe choices. That being said, I was more entertained by their season finale. And it was very straightforward. It reminds me just like their first episode. They went into it having a clear setup. They spent 20 minutes fighting. And then we basically get an epilogue for the last half of the show. Yeah. But there were a lot of payoffs. There were a lot of tying up loose ends only to untie some. And there was at least one surprise for I think a lot of us, at least one or two surprises for a lot of us. Some set up for the next season, but at the same time, like very vague about what's going to happen. And And so even though I think that they made safe choices, I'm not as disappointed in what happened with the One Piece season finale, the worst in the East, than I am with what happened with Ahsoka.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah, I felt the
Yeah.
same way. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
I felt the same way about, it's just the closeout, Ahsoka. Yeah, like at the end of the day, I enjoyed the series. It was definitely looking forward to a season 2. Definitely seems like they're going to stay if the numbers justify it, they probably will have one, or we'll see some of these story threads carried forward and, other, Disney Plus shows or the eventual Filoni movie. But, I think, yeah, it was a good season. I enjoyed it, and, on to Skeleton Crew. That'll be the next project.
So what did you think about One Piece?
So One Piece. Yeah,
That's hot.
yeah. So with One Piece, I thought I pretty much agree with your take. I thought that it was very entertaining. Like you, I was very entertained by this episode. And like I think I even said last week with the penultimate and now with this finale, I want season 2 like now because I'm just so, this was a gem of a show that it was new to both of us. And, honestly, it's like way too much like lore. There's no humanly way possible at this point where I could like even come close to watching 1,000 hours of manga anime and reading all the 1,500 or so however many volumes of manga. So I'm truly like just taking it as it comes but introducing a new show for me like this, I like was thoroughly entertained overall, start to finish. Only episode where I had any kind of moments where I was, was really the fourth one. And I thought this was a very safe, and predictable. And like you said, had some nice surprising moments and can't wait for season 2, which I was reading an article today where I think they're trying to get Jamie Lee Curtis to come and play a character on the show. Can't remember the name of the character right now, but I was reading a deadline where the showrunner for One Piece was just giving a recap of the season. And that was one of the things that he noted. So I guess we'll maybe get news about that once the actor strike is over.
Yeah. What else to talk about this episode? What did you think about Garp letting Luffy go?
That was one of those safe choices, quite frankly. I wasn't
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. I was not surprised by that.
Well, it wasn't surprising that in the end, Garp lets him go,
Yeah.
lets the Straw Hat Pirates, because at the end of the day, like, Colby's like, they haven't done anything wrong. And I was thinking about this. All of their actions, like, the only thing that they could be charged with was they did steal the map.
Yeah.
Technically.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, they haven't really done anything wrong, especially in that instance.
Mm.
And I like that it wasn't just Colby, but Haircut too, because Colby and Haircut just staying strong, united front.
Yeah, that was that. Now that was where I did go, go Haircut. I did. I even like said it out loud while I was watching an episode where I was like, go Haircut. Whenever he did that, and so yeah, I mean, and I think that was I think that's where this show really excelled in. It is really showing these relationships and over the course of the 8 episodes, how everyone's relationship evolved and grew and tightened. Because you just look at, we can just start with the Straw Hats. I mean, they were all like, Luffy had, he was very clear about what his dream was to be king of the pirates, and then it would have, and we had this world building it from the very start of introducing these characters together and pulling them together. But by the end of like I said, by the end of the season, I'm like, I am all in. I believe that these characters care for one another and they root for one another, even when Nami like just, blows right by Sanji when he's like wanting to hug, which I thought was a funny moment, but they all have their various ways of showing their affection for one another.
Right. Right. Yeah. I like that it wasn't just the Straw Hats. I was surprised by how much time we spent with the Marines throughout the entire season. I was surprised, of course, by the grandfather twist with Garp, and now we're getting Garp as the mentor. He gets to be who he's wanted to be for Luffy, for Colby, and Haircut.
Yep.
And now we got to tease Shanks is still around. Shanks is still around, kicking and doing something. He doesn't have that arm. So there's still more there. I like how there's more present day story to tell with him, his crew. I think we saw Usopp's father. I'm not sure, but there's still a whole background, and also beyond that, it's like these connections, like Mihawk clearly knows Shanks.
Yeah.
What's that history about?
Yeah.
And I like how you're even given more insight to why Mihawk didn't follow through with taking Luffy to his grandfather with one interaction. So I think along the way, there were a few like, well, why didn't that character do this? What's going on here? But this finale kind of tied up a bunch of loose ends, and then also reminded us that there are plenty loose ends still out there, because I was surprised when Buggy looks up and he sees Adeline. We haven't seen her in a long time.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I was like, oh, she's back. Oh, I see. Yeah. Oh, that was another one of those moments.
We know, like, Buggy is totally after Luffy, but Adeline, her and Colby, that is, Colby's gonna take her down, and that'll be so entertaining to watch.
That will be very entertaining to watch. Yeah. I mean, but and too, like, how this episode started, of course, where, we get, more backstory as far as young Nami and, her captivity in the map room and Arlong. I mean, again, another stellar performance this episode by the actor who plays Arlong. I mean, but also like Arlong and Luffy's final confrontation, because, Luffy, seeing Luffy realizing that I can't like physically take this guy out. But then Luffy, like, being able to literally bring the house down on him and figuratively and literally was a very satisfying conclusion to that arc, especially given what all we've seen with the village and the villagers also realizing what, they're learning what Nami did for them and it all ready to fight her and fight Arlong and the fishmen. I mean, those were all, again, just how all these stories like become intertwined and it really becomes like it really builds that world out, and you just, you feel lived in with these characters.
Yeah, it feels lived in, and it feels like I really appreciate the idea and the concept of we're just getting started. It's only just beginning. I think that's a really hard thing, honestly, to make feel like a genuine message. And I believe it speaks to the main character being Luffy and his optimism and his persistence about this idea, which, on that note, my favorite lines in this episode and arguably in the series is when Luffy tells Kobe to be a good Marine, and
Yep.
Kobe says be a good pirate, because it parallels the beginning of this
Mm-hmm.
friendship, and
Yep.
how that's what they both want. They have this idea of like a Marine is good, and then Colby's confronted with the bad Marines. And then Luffy also is always being told, and we later find out, especially by his grandfather, that pirates are always bad. Like, why would you want to be them? But he's grown up under Shanks,
Mm-hmm.
and he sees a good pirate, and Shanks tell him, be good, Luffy. So
Mm-hmm.
I just love that at the end when those two say that to each other, because I think it's such a it's not naive, but there's
Yeah.
something very childlike about it, but also just very much like you can be this role, but you
Yeah.
also have to be bad. You can
Right.
be good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though this is like your code, and this is
Mm-hmm.
like what the station you've chosen in life.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's like follow your code, follow your, and also just follow your dreams. And a recognition of that, you know, that, the parallelism that you talked about between, you know, good pirate, good Marine, all that stuff flows through, but also, you know, both Luffy and Kobe, like acknowledging that this is who he is. And I'm not, you know, and I'm not going to try to change him or change his dream. You know, so because at the beginning of the series, that was Luffy letting Kobe go off and be a Marine. And then we see the bookend on the back end with Kobe showing, coming back to Luffy with the poster, the Wano poster,
Yep.
and with the highest bounty in the East, you know, so, you know, what I thought was this perfect symmetry with their story and stuff. And really just, like you said, it really hits on that thematic thread that they've had throughout this series.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that they've managed to do with Luffy what I was really not expecting them to be able to do, but take the main character's perspective on the world
Mm-hmm.
and use it to build the show's overall viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And by having them encounter characters with different perspectives, but because of him or them, be able to shift it and be able to make them see the world through their eyes and have this belief in themselves. And it's really well done with that. I'm surprised by how much I like Luffy,
Yeah.
and how much he's not necessarily the main focus every episode,
Mm-hmm.
but he doesn't have to be, and his presence is always there. And how all of the stories that are being told are still through that overall Luffy perspective and
Yeah.
viewpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Completely
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. Yeah. And it's what, yeah. And I know whenever we first started watching this show, you were like, you were very uncertain about Luffy. But, now that we're at the end of the first season, I completely agree with what you said. And as far as him as a character and yeah, it's just, you know, the lesson that Garp wanted to show Luffy as well is like, you know, don't be naive, kid. You know, the world's a hard place, and I was just, you know, it was toughening you up to get you ready for what you're about to undertake and going into the Grand Line.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like the world can also be about adventure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard, but he's got his crew, and he knows what he believes in himself. I think that's the way to think
Yeah.
about it, or
Yeah.
to take
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
I am not going to pull a you. I like how I'm staying away from things about One Piece.
Yeah.
I don't want to get ahead. I don't want to know more because, and I kind of have done this with other projects that are based on materials where I have read too many books that have been made into movies or TV shows to know that it's never the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't want to build my own headcanon about stuff. And so I just want to watch the stories be told that these creators want to tell from this mine that I'm sure that they have. And I'm looking forward to the next season whenever it comes. I hope that maybe they tack on 2 episodes, have it be a 10 episode season.
Yeah.
But they gave us some pretty like full hour episodes. So I'm not mad at it being 8. They didn't waste a lot of time, as we've discussed before. So they had a clear start and beginning, middle and end.
Yeah, they did. They did. They really did. And we got a little tack on scene to whet our appetites for season 2.
That was, who's the guys?
Smoker? Remember at the bonus scene there at the end right before the credits?
I know who it is, but do you know his actual name?
I don't. Again,
I was thinking about the guy who's treasure, Jolly Roger.
Oh yeah. It was Jolly Roger. Oh, I'm blanking on it now. But, yeah. But I was just thinking about, but to your point about looking forward to season 2 and, really trying to stay away from the source material. I know I DM'd you that, I had watched the first episode, a little bit of the first episode on Netflix, since they have anime on there now. But I think I am, as I said at the beginning, it's just so much. And 1 and 2, to your point, I agree. I don't want to like taint my viewing by knowing too much about the source material, so I can just evaluate this on my own as just a new fan.
Yeah. And on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK.
You can find me there too at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew there at Scene and Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_n_nerd. And visit our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.